service for the justification of a way of life. And the consequence of this such approach to deen is, number one, إن الحق لا يعمل به. Nobody practices what is right. As a matter of fact, one of the characteristics of such society that haqq and batil becomes relative. What beneficial for me becomes haqq. What is harmful to me becomes batil. In contemporary parlance and the language, it says utilitarian ethics, in which ethic and morality becomes relative. Action doesn't have an intrinsic value in itself, but it depends on the benefit and loss, an economic kind of proposition. So, حق لا يعمل به. أمر بالمعروف النهي عن المنكر is no longer practiced. And I mentioned a few examples in which you have the wali of Khalif in Kufa on an early morning going to the mosque, drunk, offering the Salat al-Subh 4 rak'ah, and then he comes out and turns his face to the congregation and says, since I feel joyful, I can add another 2 rak'ah for you if you want. Nobody stood up, Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy an al Munkar. Nobody stood up to say, look, it is forbidden. So, a materialistic or material central life is Amr bil Ma'ruf is out. Nobody listens to haqq anymore. As Al-Kitab, the book, Quran, is forgotten and the Sunnah is dead. And I recited a number of comments by Imam Hussein Salawatullah Salam alayhi that alluded to these facts as a unique characteristics of the society at the time. I also added another point, that to understand what happened by the time the second and specifically the third Khalif took over, and the shift, the dynamic shift that took place, you really need to understand the political structure that existed in the Arabian Peninsula before Islam. The ecological condition imposed a unique way of life that what we call urban living was not possible. It was rural and primarily tribal, in which people had to move in search of arable land. There were only a tiny band of arable land near Yemen on the southern part. And this is why both civilization, the strong civilization on the north, which was the Byzantines and the Persians, failed to encourage and tame the people within the Arabian Peninsula to settle down into what they call an urban living standard. Few cities that existed, like Mecca because of its historical reason, and Medina because it had little bit more rain and more arable land, were unique. But most the tribes or people of Arabian Peninsula had to move. And there is a chapter in the Holy Quran, لإيلاف قريش إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف, that they are a nomadic lifestyle, that they had to travel during summer and during winter. They moved north during summer and they moved south during winter. That was the unique characteristic. But out of such a ecological condition came a unique political structure, in which tribe and tribal mentality became the dominant way of thinking, and your association or your relation to others was based on blood only. The survival of the tribe was paramount, and the only way the tribe can survive is for the head, the tribal leader, to decide and for people to submit. What became paramount is for your tribe alone to succeed. This is totally in contrast to the way of thinking that the Holy Prophet brought to Medina to bring people of Aus and Khazraj and even the Jewish community together based on unique, what we call the conformity and unity in objective in society. Now, these are issues that I have talked about, because once we come to Uthman, the third Khalif, we see exactly the same modality that existed before Islam being practiced. What concerned Bani Umayyah was Bani Umayyah's benefit only, nobody else's. And for them to get better and richer, it was at the expense. It's mutually exclusive relationship, either us or somebody else. For us to survive, we need to do everything that all other tribes are subdued. And we begin to see the sign of it the moment the group comes out of Saqifa victorious with a new so-called Khalif as a representative. The first step was to strip Bani Hashim from their economic powers. The issue of Fadak. Going back to the hadith, this is from the Holy Prophet ﷺ that says, مَثَلُ أَهْلِ بَيْتِي كَمَثَلِ سَفِينَةِ نُوحٍ. The simile of Ahl Bayt, my close family, and by the way, by now historically we have established who were the Ahlul Bayt. There is a debate within the Shia and Sunni community regarding. Some people take it as way expansive, and others say no, it is Ali, Fatima, Hassan, Hussein. These were considered to be Ahlul Bayt. There are a number of hadith narrated in Sahih Sitta as well. مثل أهل بيتي كمثل سفينة روح. The simile between the two is like Noah's Ark. In the same way that in the flood of Noah, the only thing that gave stability and survival or created the opportunity of survival was the ark itself. Whoever stood behind lost and perished. And whoever joined the ark survived. Whoever, the simile, it uses a metaphor. And Quran uses a metaphor as well to break down complex examples or issues and situations so that it becomes something people understand. A metaphor. Whoever stays with Ahlul Bayt is going to survive. And whoever doesn't, challenges them, stays behind, is going to perish. The question is, why such a broad relationship? First of all, we have a number of verses in the Holy Quran that clearly identify, at least with regard to Prophet Ibrahim and our Prophet, Holy Prophet, calls them uswa. Prophet Ibrahim's Quran considers him to be uswa, and our Prophet, وَلَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, the Holy Prophet is the role model for you. Two questions. Number one, why human beings or social structures need role models? And number two, what are the unique characteristics of these individuals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes them the role model? Certainly, those who claim Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them this way is a little bit hard and difficult to swallow. Because if they have been made this way, it's not the struggle from self, there is no jihad and struggle to become the example. Then it becomes problematic for other people. We are not made that way, and then for them to guide us, there is a contrast here. But what we talk about in Kalam or in our theology is that these people were unique because of the struggle that they went through to make themselves unique. And if that's the case, following that path creates the right opportunity for anyone that moves forward with them. We have a hadith, As-Salmanu minna Ahl al-Bayt. The Holy Prophet says, these 5 individuals are Ahlul Bayt, but one of them or few of them, they say, at the same, the Holy Prophet himself would say, As-Salmanu minna Ahlul Bayt. It's because of the submission that Salman and Abu Dhar and Miqdad and Ammar and others gave to these individuals and followed their footsteps. Let's be blunt. What does it mean to be a Shia? An existential question. We pay lip service and we claim to be Shia. Shi'at Ahlul Bayt, Shi'at Ali, Shi'at Fatima, Shi'at Hassan, Shi'at. What does exactly that mean? Technically, linguistically, Shia means a follower. Somebody who follows the footstep. They move forward, you follow them. If we are judging ourselves, which part of our life is technically following the footstep of Ahlul Bayt? Salat and Saum. Well, I mentioned this last night, that on the day of Ashura, Umar ibn Sa'd led a prayer as well. They all prayed. On the other side, Hussein was praying Salat al-Dhuhr as well, or Salat the difficult prayer. So Salat by itself is not the criteria that would somehow qualify us to. Other people do the prayer. Saum, well, everybody fasts. That's not the criteria. There must be something else. And these are the critical issues that we have to see in our personal life and in our social structure, whether these characteristics and traits exist or not. If we bring 3 hadith together, the fundamental framework or criteria for following is standing up for justice in your life and supporting what is right and standing against what is wrong. The hadith, إني تارك فيكم الثقلين or ثقلين كتاب الله وعترة. There is another hadith that says كتاب الله وسنة. لن يفترقا. Kitab and Ahlul Bayt, they are not going to separate حتى يرد علي الحوض, until they come back to me on the day of judgment, close to the pool of Kawthar. What does it mean? They are not separating, they are inseparable. That their life becomes the embodiment of the book. If you want, and remember, Amir al-Mu'mineen at least on one occasion claimed this. When Muawiyah in the Battle of Siffin, with the order or at least comments made or advice given by Amr ibn As, that the situation became very critical for Muawiyah. Malik Ashtar was close to Muawiyah's tent and nearly finished him. To get a way out, they put the Quran on the spears. Let Quran be the judge between the two of us. That was enough. Simple-minded followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen stopped fighting. What did he say? He said, this is a piece of paper on the spear. I am the living Quran. One of the fundamental problems that we had over the history is that people, Muslim society, really did not understand the meaning of imamah, the value of imamah, the guidance and everything else. Why? Because the comfort zone was such that we did not, or they did not want to come out of it and trouble themselves. Because alaykum as-salam. Had they done that, they had to commit themselves to a totally different lifestyle. They didn't want to do it. إني تارك فيكم الثقلين كتاب الله وعترة لن يفترقا. They are not inseparable. Kitab and Ahlul Bayt لن يفترقا حتى يرد علي. And this hadith, مثل أهل بيتي كمثل سفينة نوح. The simile is like the Noah's Ark. The only framework for survival is for the community to follow them, to be on board with them, to understand them, to follow their order. Ashura represents the success and failure of a small group of people, only 72, some people say 80, some people say 100, but definitely not more than 120, compared to thousands on the opposition. But this small number made history because they understood the meaning of imamah and they were prepared to give everything for that sake. Where we fail, that we pay lip service to the imamah. We benefit from calling ourselves Shias. But are we prepared? Let me repeat the example I gave the first night. There is a hadith that we say, Imam al-Zaman salawatullah salamu alayhi is going to come back when we have 313 dedicated individuals, the number of Badr, to the troop in Badr. 313 dedicated individuals. Let's assume that this is the number. Or a group. Let's not even be specific with 313. It's just a number, a small group of numbers that are prepared to dedicate themselves to the goal and submit themselves to the command. Brothers, as well as the sisters in the back, 1,200 and something has gone, close to 1,200 years, from the ghiba of Sughra. Ghibat Sughra was 255, the beginning of it. And around 320 went from the small occultation into the large occultation. And we have not been able, and there are a number of hadith from A'imma, and specifically from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that says God is not going to bring him back until you prepare the ground for his return. So we have a long way to go. One of the characteristics is absolute submission to the command of God. There is a verse in the Holy Quran, قُلْ, this is Prophet Ibrahim, إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايِ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Say that absolute submission, my prayers, worship, my life and death will be only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which means what? When there is a conflict of priorities, God comes first. God comes first. Not God is treated like a spare tire in a car. When we have punctures, then we remember that there is God around that we have to go to. God comes first. This is why we have a number of verses in the Holy Quran praising a number of individuals. Ahlul Bayt. Insan, ayah 7 and 8. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. They provide food for the sake and the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To the orphan, to the poor, and to the prisoner. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ. The only thing that we give it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing else. This is the framework that they are going to set for us. That organize your life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is another hadith, Ya Aba Dhar. This is a hadith from Rasulullah to Aba Dhar. ليكن لك في كل شيء فيه صالحه حتى في النوم. Do your best for everything, even for your eating and your sleeping. Have a clear niyyah as-salihah, a clear intention. وَإِذَا عَمَلْتَ عَمَلًا فَعْمَلْ لِلَّهِ خَالِصًا. If you want to do something, Do it for the sake of Allah alone. فإنه لا يقبل من عباده إلا الأعمال إلا ما كان خالصا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to accept any deed unless it's done purely for the sake of Allah. This is why some people they kill, they call they are shaheed and martyrs, and thousands of other people are killed. Nothing. Because the intention is not clear. And the two in this hadith has been narrated both from Amir al-Mu'mineen in Nahj al-Balagha and Imam Hussein as well. Man talaba ridha Allah bi sakhat al-nas. In your prioritization, if you choose the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, even if people do not agree with it. من طلب رضا الله بسخط الناس كفاه الله أمور الناس. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take care and protect that individual from any harm that other people might submit to. وَمَنْ طَلَبَ رِضَى النَّاسِ. But if in our prioritization the situation is reversed, we do things for this, what matters first is for people to be happy with us, not Allah to be pleased with us. وَمَنْ طَلَبَ رِضَى النَّاسِ بِسَخَطِ اللَّهِ. Even to the point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be displeased, وَكَّلَهُ اللَّهُ عَلَى النَّاسِ. He leaves you and leaves us to the other people. And this is that we constantly see from the slogans, the saying, the hadith, Allahumma innaka ta'lam. This is from Imam Hussein sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma innaka ta'lam innahu lam yakun ma kana minna tanafusan fi sultan. What we did, we were not really material life, power and everything else really didn't matter. This is exactly what Amir al-Mu'mineen said when Ibn Abbas came to him during the 3.5 or 4 years or close to 5 years of his leadership. And he saw sitting down and mending a very old, decrepit pair of slippers. And he said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, just look at you. You are Khalifatul Muslimin. What are you doing? He said, Ya Ibn Abbas, how much do you think this pair of slippers is worth? He said, nothing. He said, Wallah, leadership on being a leader of your community is even to me is valued less than the pair of slippers that I have, if it wasn't for the fact that I have a responsibility to take the right of those who have been marginalized and their rights are not given to them. And this is exactly what Imam Hussein does. How many of us are prepared to do that in our life? Allahumma innaka ta'lam innahu lam yakun ma kana minna tanafusan fi sultan. We really, the uprising of Karbala wasn't for power. But so that we clean the deen and nadhar al-islah fi bilad, to revive and change and bring stability on earth. And then on the night just before he comes out of Medina, goes to the mausoleum of the Holy Prophet, prays, and then says, Allahumma inni ahibbul ma'roof wa ankar al-munkar. I love doing right and I hate doing bad things. وأسألك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام بحق القبر ومن فيه. I ask you, plead to you because of this burial site and the person that has been buried here. ومن فيه إلا اخترت من أمري ما هو لك رضا. Choose for me what you are happy for. Absolute submission. We talk about musibah, yes, but very quickly, conveniently forget about the meaning of it and the significance of it. An arrow on the day of Ashura, just before his death and his martyrdom, comes and hits close to his heart. Puts his hand under the blood, throws it up, ridan. Absolute submission. Whatever you decide, we are happy with it. So number one is that absolute submission to the command of God and giving priority to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before everything else, which is very difficult to do if instead of life God-centric being materialistic and what we call dunya-centric. The second characteristic is how he served the needy and the poor within the community. It used to be the characteristics of the Muslim community. Go and read the history of Fatimiyya dynasty in Egypt, Islam in Andalusia, and other places, where others who were not familiar with Islam came to the Muslim community. A number of things stood up as a unique characteristics. One that everyone, all historians, the foreigners that talk about it, is how the Muslim community served the poor and the needy within their own community. When was the last time we actually inquired within our community that how many poor and needies exist around us? Going to the hospitals and checking the sick. On the day of Ashura, there is a hadith that says people later on, when they came to bury the bodies, they found a big wound on the back of Imam Hussein salawatullah sallam, that was still bleeding. So they asked Imam Zain al-Abidin as what it is. He said, this is because of the heavy weight that he used to carry during his life, late at night, to go to orphans, the needy, and so on, to distribute food between them. And those of us who have read the story of Amir al-Mu'mineen sallallahu alaihi wasallam understand that the orphans of Kufa, the poor of Kufa, only found out who was coming late at night, covering his face and providing them with food and assistance after the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Are we prepared to follow that? Don't we call ourselves Shia? Linguistically, I said Shia is the followers. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullah salam alayhi says, Mal'oonun mal'oon, man wuhiba lahu malan falam yatasaddaq minhu shay'a. The curse of Allah will be on somebody that Allah has given the wealth to, and you have become affluent, and you don't give what is due to the poor and the needy out of this. Sadaqah, by the way, linguistically is totally different from wajibat. Khums and zakat is the wajibat. That's not called sadaqah. Sadaqah is something that you give in addition to what is obligatory. Man wuhiba lahu malan falam yatasaddaq minhu shay'a. Doesn't support the poor and the needy. Alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullah. Again, Imam Hussein says, اعلموا أن حوائج الناس إليكم من نعم الله عليكم. When God wants to favor someone, creates the situation in which the poor will come to you with question and asking you for support. Be aware, if you let them pass away without supporting them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take that ni'mah and the blessing that has given you away from you. And there are stories, huge amount of stories with regard to the life of Imam Hussein. The man comes from Sham. Remember, Muawiyah succeeded in isolating the Sham in particular and separating it from the rest of the Islamic area. Comes, Shami was an epitome of what we call hate for Ahlul Bayt. comes to Medina, straight away goes to the mosque and asks, says, where is this Hussein ibn Ali? He's sitting over there teaching. Comes close, begins insulting. Remember, Sham was used to the notion of La'an al-Ali, ala Ali. Muawiyah made it a sunnah. I'm trying to understand one Ashra Mubashara making cursing another Ashra Mubashara, and they all are going to heaven. So this guy comes to Medina and starts cursing the entire Ahlul Bayt. Imam sits, waits until he finishes. And he says, I take it that you are a stranger in this town. If you need assistance, come to my house. And took him to his house, served him. And then when after he wanted to leave, gave him a bag of money and says, and apologized that our financial situation is not that good at the moment. This is the best that I can offer. Do we have that character or trait in us? If somebody comes to us for help, are we prepared to support? There is another hadith that says, and Ansari, one of the helpers in Medina, came to Imam Hussein and asked for help. To keep his honor and dignity, so you don't come out and talk and ask for support in front of people, he said, my brother, go and write what you need on a piece of paper and bring it to me. I'll read it and I'll try to do my best. So this man writes on a piece of paper that would you be kind enough to tell so-and-so who has lent me money, 500 dinar, to wait, give me some extra time so I can provide the money or get the money or work or give it to him. Imam gives him 1,000 dinar and says, use 500 dinar to give to the person whom you owe to, and another one use it for your own life. But then he gives advice. He says, if you ever have a question, you are forced, in the need forces you to ask 3 people in your society. Don't go to anyone else. Number 1, a truly religious person. A truly religious person, when you ask them, they are not going to turn you away because they understand that this questioning is a blessing. Number 2, a chevalier, somebody who has a free spirit. A free spirit individual is not going to put you down by rejecting you because of that free spirit. Number 3, go for someone who has a good family background. Don't waste your time for anybody else. Today is the 2nd day of Muharram, or just about the night of the 3rd of Muharram. Historians claim that like such a day, the Holy Family arrived in Karbala, in the plain of Karbala. They opened the tents and settled down. And within half an hour or an hour after, people saw some movement from far away that originally the ashab or the disciple of the Holy Imam, they said it looks like trees moving. And then as this shadow came forward, they realized that it is people. They are horsemen that are moving towards the direction of the tents. It turns out to be Hur, with 1,000 people coming in to stop Imam Hussein from moving forward. You have to stop here until Ibn Ziyad or Khalif or anybody else decides. What does he do? Imam knew that 8 days from there he's going to be, and the entire family are going to be slaughtered, and these people are going to cut down water for the household. but still opened the water and gave not only to the horsemen, to the horses as well. This is called free spirit. That you even, I mean, this notion within Christianity we have, if somebody slap your face, turn the other way, or love thy enemy. Here we have Imam giving water to the group of people that 8 days from there he knew they are going to kill him. The enemy. So what do we understand? I mean, tonight and tomorrow night I'm going to continue with the same issue, picking up akhlaq and few other traits of Ahlul Bayt that we really is absent from our community. Last night I indicated this, that Ashura has become the lens in which we recognize or understand or assess the character of Imam Hussein. Ashura was the tip of the iceberg. 55 years of service produced, culminated in the 10 days of Ashura. What about the rest of the life? What do we learn? What do we understand? What do we know about this life? The knowledge, the mystical approach, the understanding of God, submission to the command of God, support for the poor, the needy, etc., etc., etc. Truthfulness, supporting justice, amr bil ma'ruf, nahy anil munkar, standing against tyranny. Why is it that we don't do any of them? The life of Imam Hussein spanned over 55 years. Let us start from the beginning and move with him forward. And at each phase of his life, try to compare what he did and what we are doing. Then we see how far are we behind from the whole framework that they set for us. We say that another hadith, إن الحسين مصباح الهدى وسفينة النجاة. It's similar to the simile of the Noah's Ark. The light for guidance and the ship for success. Do we follow it? Do we understand what he did? We occasionally we come up and we criticize. Why didn't he stand up during the 10 years of his life that he was Imam, during the latter part of Muawiyah, etc., etc. Inshallah, if there is an opportunity tomorrow night, we will continue with this discussion, but I will start early. There are issues in Imam Hussein's life that literally the mind boggles when we try to think about it. One of them was, as I indicated, this absolute, no question submission to the command of God. And that's why Quran says Rasulullah Uswa, which means a role model. Without a role model, a social structure or religion becomes mere a theoretical proposition, nothing more, nothing less. Islam, without living in examples, becomes like the views of Aristotle and everybody else, other philosophers. Just a proposition. It's only when it gives you these individuals that you can follow and understand. If I follow the faith, that is where I will end. The true servant in Islam, in the mystical tradition, is called Al-Insanul Kamil, the perfect example. These people were the perfect example. We are the imperfect ones. Are we moving forward towards the perfection, or we are staying behind? That will be the theme for tomorrow night, inshallah. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead.
Could you please touch base what is the comparison between the leadership and role model?
Well, role model is the clear example, what we call the perfect human being that one could imitate, it naturally leads to that role model being the leader because of its absolute perfection. And this is why the debate on who deserves to be the leader of the community between the two major schools of thoughts in Islam was exactly this. That if we accept by the admission of the first Khalif, second Khalif, forgetting about the third Khalif, that they were not perfect. They always needed somebody else's assistance. Abu Bakr admitted it himself. Omar said it on a number of occasions. So if they are imperfect, they don't deserve the leadership, because the leadership is reserved for that perfect role model. Leadership is the responsibility that's given to the role model to lead on both the political position, as we say the Holy Prophet was, and the political position, as well as the other parts of one's life. And by the way, the debate about the perfect specimen of human being deserving to be the leader is not new in Islam. If you look at the Aristotelian discussion about the leadership in the community, Plato came up with this notion of the philosopher king, when they were talking about who deserves to be the king in a society. These two philosophers said that the philosopher deserves to be the king. Why? Because of his trait, the unique characteristics that he has, knowledge and other characteristics. And that idea applies here as well. People that said imama is a unique position that requires, in addition to the political leadership, requires the person to be the example, the exemplary individual, the role model, the uswa. So, unfortunately, what happened, the political responsibility was not given to them, but Ahlul Bayt still remained as the role model for the Shia community, whether they had the political power with them or not. Sometimes they go, technically they should go together. But sometimes what happened after the demise of the Holy Prophet, these two were separated from each other. An imperfect specimen was the political leader, and perfect individual, and Insan al-Kamil simply stayed as an example for the community.
I have a follow-up question. As Quran called for Prophet Ibrahim, designate him as an imam, as well as Prophet Muhammad. And can you touch a base on the imamat, as well as leadership within the society?
Shia political theory is based on exactly these two notions. Thousands of books have been written about it. I don't think within 5 minutes I will be able to give justice to either imama or the political leadership. One needs to have a lecture on Al-Ghadir. Ghadir Day or celebration of Ghadir would have been the best opportunity to discuss this and unpack what we call the political theory from a Shia perspective. That what it means, a hadith that exists, riwayat that we have, verses in the Holy Quran. Is imama more valuable or more important than, say, risala or everything else? These are things that have been debated, and there are a number of books. You only need to go alislam.org, then type in imama and wilaya or Islamic leadership, and islam.org is a good website that you can see various articles about this. But as a lecture, we really need much more time to unpack it. What do we mean by imam? Who is the imam? Who should be the imam? Is asma and infallibility part of it or not? what is the view of the Muslim community, both Shias and Sunnis, with regard to infallibility. Is it absolute? Is it conditional? And a few others. They deserve it because of their infallibility or because of their characteristics and traits. And how should be imposed? Our people have the right to support or at least to sanction such a thing, or no, it has to be purely from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are debates that exist in it, and I don't think we have time tonight. Go ahead.
I have a question about the history of imams. Like during the time of caliphs, were they attending the Jama'ah, Salah Jama'ah, prayer Jama'ah? And if they were attending, were they praying behind whoever was the imam, their imam Jama'ah?
Well, we have a fatwa from Marhum Imam Rahmatullah alayhi, Imam Khomeini, regarding the Imam of Mecca and Medina, Wahhabis. Imam said that for the sake of preserving unity of the Muslim community, you can and you should make niyyah of jama'ah behind them. So using that kind of understanding, we can say with full justification that to preserve the unity of the Muslim community, they attended Friday prayer, they attended Eid prayers. But before we say why did they do that, we really need to understand what was their role, even during what we call sukut and silence. Their role was to preserve and protect Islam. Number one. That was the dominant or the role that they gave importance to. If you look at the khutbah of Shaykh in Nahj al-Balagha, Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salamu alayhi clearly outlines why he went silent. Because he said, I had two choices. Either I could rise up and take what was justifiably mine, but the consequence was the destruction of the Muslim community, particularly at the early age, or swallow this pain for the preservation of the Muslim community. And I found the second one to be better than the first. So, since you have asked the question, I probably will start tomorrow night outlining the overall goals that shared between imams. There is a tendency with historians to think that each imam acted independently of the other imam. Technically speaking, there was a shared goal, the preservation of Islam and the protection of the Muslims, the good believers. What came or appeared to be different was due what we call a methodological approach, which was as a consequence of unique time and characteristic of the time that imposed on them a way of life. Imam Hussein rose for Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy al Munkar and to improve the Muslim community and remind them that they had an obligation. Educate them. Once it wasn't possible, we see Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, Imam Zain al-Abidin does exactly the same thing, but with a different method. Imam Muhammad al-Baqir and Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, they do the same thing with a different method. So there is a convergence of goal, differences of approach. And inshallah, we will try tomorrow night. But certainly, because of in usul we have a fundamental principle, we call it Bab al-Tanazu', when there is a conflict between more important and less important thing. You go for the more important at the expense of the less important. So if the preservation of the Muslim community was critical and the appearance of unity was paramount, then who else but them as the custodian of the faith to follow that and do everything possible to preserve the unity of Islam. It should not be interpreted that the appearance in the mosque is somehow consent for the leadership. No, far from it. They had constantly rejected the leadership, but at the time in they had to come and stay there to keep an eye on the situation. These two are independent of each other. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.